why to pick up one form of literacy, media, above other? Could be cultural literacy, could be information literacy, could be technology literacy. We could speak about many fields of literacies, and that's why in my overall title I have Literacies. And I want to explain how did we end up with media literacy, and I want to explain why is it so problematic. It's not the one that I think is the best and most correct, but it's still most practical to be used. But if you look at the scenario, world scenario, how is the world going, is developing at the moment, and if we are living, which I described, high-tech culture or culture of science and technology, is that the global culture, and how does science and technology is reflected in different civilizational contexts? This is the one I want to find out at the end. But if we are talking about high-tech and science and technology, there are some things that are common to the world, and that is a big issue. That can we speak about global civil society, a global civic culture, or should we talk about Western culture, maybe Eastern culture, maybe other civilizations, or should we look at one global approach? But anyway, these are some of the drivers of change that are clearly observable in today's world. Extreme longevity, so people live longer. That is already shown in a very practical example, that like myself, for example, I'm 71 years. And in my age, people in the past did not work much. They didn't even live that long for that matter. Of course, there were people who lived long also in the past, but in general, people live now longer, and it creates all kinds of new social, political problems to be solved. And that's why there's a generational conflict also very obvious, that different generations do not communicate between themselves, and so forth. So this is one change. But the second is the smart machines and systems, which is changing everything, the technology, computational world, everything is more or less computational, so you need to have computational skills. Computer literacy, computational skills is a demand to live in this culture. New media ecology, that is exactly how do we put ourselves into the media environment when everything is, most of the time is now calculated, like in the United States, that most of the time when you are not sleeping, or you spend your time with the media, or different types of media. So media is so central, and that's why media competencies, media skills, and media literacies have become central to this culture. Organizations are superstructured, and they are globally connected. We are in a global world. And these are the skills that have been identified by the centers of workforce, international centers like this IFTF, what kind of skills are needed. When you come to school, you come to university, you go wherever, what are the employers requiring from you? And what is society requiring from you? And if you look at the list, it shows that so many things could be need to be mastered. Can anybody master all of these things? There's a danger that if we think that we take a small piece of physics or cognitive sciences from there, mathematics from here, a small piece of history, selective part of history from here, language skills from there, you don't create any civilized mind. You are actually very superficial. layman in everything. It doesn't mean that you are specialist or knowledgeable in anything. So it's very difficult to be transdisciplinary unless you master something. But this is a debated thing, and there are different approaches now all over the world how to develop this approach. And personally, I think that the fields that I represent, communication, education, media, they are by nature transdisciplinary because they are not one discipline-based. Some people even say that education is not a science, communication is not a science, it is a kind of skill or competence or field, whatever. And many schools have emphasized that there is a transdisciplinary approach to communication. But even areas like peace, it's not the disciplinary based, it's something more general. So how to develop these skills, design mindset, virtual collaboration, cross-cultural competency. This is an example that I favor very much students, classes, with number of students from very different cultures. Because how do you develop cross-cultural competency? If that's a word we don't want to use, cross-cultural competency, we can also use intercultural, or some people prefer multicultural. They are not the same because there's a different history in all of the concepts. But let us use this cross-cultural because this is from the international literature, that it means that we are able to work with others from different cultural backgrounds. It becomes more difficult when we go to the civilizational depth, that we go into the faith and belief systems and the basic core values of civilizations. Does it work or doesn't it work? I'm going to talk a little bit later today about the first efforts to build the global civic society, if it is to work. But the new media ecology, new media literacy is another concept to media literacy. Should we speak about new media literacy, or should we speak about 21st century literacies? Cognitive load, computational thinking, social intelligence, and sense making, all of these things. First of all, we have to have media education if we want to have media literacy. It is an issue that it doesn't come out of the air. No kind of literacy is coming automatically. When you are born, you are illiterate, definitely. You have to be educated for all kinds of literacies. So if we speak about media literacy, we have also to speak about media literacy. And after a minute, in a few minutes, I will explain you how did we come 15 years ago to see media literacy in the context of media education. But already here, I want to show that media education in your countries is very much in different stage than maybe in another country or in your country some time ago. And it will be different for tomorrow. And I don't know if we can say that there is a common global model. There's no global model for any kind of education. If you have a human rights education, you have a peace education, you have technology education. Certain models and certain curriculum can be borrowed from other countries, but if you come to such a field as media education, you are moving into very core values of the society. What is the role of family? What is the role of kindergarten? What is the role of primary school, secondary school, higher education, and so forth? And what is the role of informal, formal, and non-formal education? All of these have to be solved in each cases. And I'm just saying because some of you are very advanced in this field, some are coming to realize the importance, but it's a basic starting point is media education. But the second starting point is critical and creative abilities and skills. This is because we don't have any model from the past, how to face these new situations of technology. Of course, we had the situations when writing became a general competence of all citizens, maybe 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and it took time how to introduce reading and writing into societies. But what about these new technologies, and what are the critical skills? First of all, they are this type of things. We have to be not only critical thinking, but we have to be able to solve problems that are created by the technology. So there's no model from the past. How do you solve problems that are created by introducing newer and newer technology? And that's why the model of learning by doing or practicing may be sometimes better, because if you only speak about new forms of internet and how to do social media, but you don't do it, you don't necessarily learn. It was the same in the old media. But there are also more elements to the critical and creative abilities that in order to be really media competent, you have to be able to produce also media messages. Not only classical writing, but you have to be able to produce some sort of video, YouTube, or your messages that make sense in the new media environment. And for that you need the semantic skills and so forth. And thirdly, the third component is, what do we want to achieve? What do we want to achieve with this media literacy? Why is it important socially and politically? Now, in all this approach, I'm speaking about my own approach, and my colleague José Manuel Pérez Tornero and some others. I don't mean that everybody thinks this way, but I do think this way, that we want to achieve participation and active citizenship. So this is already quite difficult. Participation means that, just like the old literacies, when people learn to read, not only to hear what was read in public places and churches for them, but that they could be able to read, they could also participate in the social life. And with the new media, my understanding is that with the new media literacy, they can participate meaningfully in the social, political, cultural, human, personal life and social life. And the concept of active citizenship is a very dangerous concept, which I favor, and the colleagues that I'm soon introducing, we think it's a goal. But you can also say, why does those who are in power, why do they want to have active citizenship? Isn't it better that people are passive? It's easier to rule people who are not too active. Those who follow what has been told to do, maybe authoritarian or some kind of totalitarian control. So this is a democratic issue. Do we want people to be active in their own life? And my view is that yes, we want to empower them. But then the dimensions for this participation are highest enough. I say intercultural dialogue, for example. Of course, there's all this democracy, participation, and so forth, and development of professional values. But this is the goal, and if you put them together, and you see now media literacy in the center. And as I tried to explain, that media education, the arrow is one directional, the green arrow. It goes from education, it's creating capabilities, skills, competencies, what we call media literacy. And we analyze media literacy in a minute. But this is one directional. So media education comes first, and literacy is outcome, is a result. Then the question is, what is the literacy? Let's talk about it in a minute. But this arrow is two-directional. That good media literacy also creates more critical attitude to all kinds of messages. But the more you are critical and the more you are creative in your relationship to the media, the more you also develop your media literacy competence. Media literacy is not a static. It's not even it's a continuum that is developing all the time. So this is necessary interaction. And then the arrow, the red arrow, is the objective, the goal that hopefully is resulting or is coming out of the media literate society. This is and was our thinking. And before I explain a little bit more how did we come and how did I come to see media literacy as the concept, I want to show in passing that there are other forms of literacies that can be added, separated from media literacy. But I want to add those, for those who come from outside Finland, that if I speak about my works 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it might sound old. What is old? What is new? Something is new, but something remains, some problems. This is a most newest publication by Finnish and Nordic and Baltic media information literacy experts. I'm not an author in this. I just want to show you that this is material you might be interested in. In summary, it's available online as well. But in summary, these are the issues that our colleagues in the north are discussing nowadays. And for example, the first one is that in the Nordic region, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, Norway, and also now the Baltic states, the scholars that there's a necessity to empowering people. So Nordic system, so social system, wants to see people active in the sense that they have to be empowered to deal and make their own life free citizens and free participants on social life. And the discussion is what type of media literacy do we need and what kind of literacy is sufficient for participatory democracy now. These are the questions. The third area that I realize now, this was not yet there when we developed the European approach with that group that I belong to, the hate speech and threats. The world is much more militarized now than it was when 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We were much more we were much optimistic of the positive developments, and we believe that this media literacy is needed for helping cooperation and strengthening international activities. Now we realize, not we, but the political elite has come to realize that there are threats to the democracy and extremist movements, that media literacy is needed somehow to eliminate the use of media for negative purposes. I'll speak in a minute about peace as a goal of media literacy, or peace as a way of life in this context. We come back to the issue. But the Nordic countries are not that much putting themselves above others. That we, as it says, it's not an island, but we have managed to develop a relatively advanced, or actually very advanced system of all kinds of education, and also in media education, also elsewhere in Europe, like in Holland and other places. But now the issue is how to empower and how to be critical in a digital and global world. These are the challenges of today. And finally, on this part, my work also in the ministry, I was never employed directly by the Ministry of Education, but this is the kind of stairs that Ms. Ritva Merilampi. She is a Finnish retired scholar and also counselor of the ministry. She worked, and I worked very much with her, developing the Finnish approach to media literacy. And you can see how we have been thinking. The other question is how to implement, but this is how we when we started motivation, reception skills, production, skills comprehension, achieving the ethical, moral value choices, and coming up to sociocultural ability, intercultural dialogue as the ultimate goal. This has been as a background document. Have we advanced in that or not, or are we at all better than anybody? This was in year 2000, 17 years ago. It's in your life, it's a long time ago. In my life, it was just yesterday. That I was invited to speak in the European Commission workshop, and also, well, this is a Commission workshop, but a couple of weeks earlier, I was invited to European Parliament and the Council of Ministers joint session, because that was only 17 years ago. They were puzzled with the issue of media literacy and e-learning, these issues. And this is very quickly, I show you what was, my presentation was more or less summarizing my approach, but then it was used in the beginning of European perspective, because after all, and these figures are from year 2000. Now Europe is bigger, but we were intellectually very much still following the American thinking. And even the concepts that we borrowed came from United States. They are much more advanced, the Americans, as they still are in this field. Even though we have, at that time, 20 different cultures and languages, I think there's 24 or something like now, official languages in Europe. But this is the Center for Media Literacy that I borrowed as a beginning, a starting point, that what is the media literacy concept. And if you do some research to the European Parliament resolutions, there's prepared by the European Commission that are available from the portal that I showed which is in the beginning of European Union media literacy. If you look at the documents that the media in a digital age, they start almost virtually with the concept that media literacy is ability to communicate competently in all media, print and electronic, as well as access, analyze, evaluate the powerful images and sounds. But this is it's not my word, it's not European word, it is from one of the American centers. So I borrowed, and I don't mean that I was that important that my text was used, but it was used, either my text or from other sources, the same approach. And it's okay. But the problem was that at that time, as is now, the concern was very much visual literacy. And this is like Umberto Eco is still one of the big authorities in the visual literacy or all kind of literary literacy work. A democratic civilization will save itself only if it makes the language of image into a stimulus for critical reflection, not an invitation to hypnosis. I don't remember where is the source, but I do remember him saying once, one of the occasions, that the constant flow of images is like pornographic. It doesn't has any impact anymore because it spoils. Too much images spoils the influence and impact. It's just like oral. If you speak too much, use too much words that are sacred or holy, it spoils the whole meaning. So you have to be very careful in communication. When too much communication spoils the whole thing. And interestingly, when everything was in color, suddenly people realized that to communicate better, it's to have black and white, it's much better impact. Or in lecturing, when everybody has PowerPoints, somebody comes and have no PowerPoints, has a skill of speaking, has much better impact. So this is a starting point, but we had to, and you have to answer this question when you have the program in your own countries. What is the medium? Should we concentrate one particular medium? And are we talking about the perspective to media culture? Or are we concentrating on knowledge of the media? All these questions have to be solved. And James Potter, who was at that time, he still is a kind of authority. He gave a very good list of approaches that media literacy is a continuum. It is, nobody is totally illiterate, but nobody is fully media literate either, because the competencies and skills develop all the time. It has to be developed. It's multidimensional, cognitive, emotional, aesthetic, and moral. All of these dimensions are there, and it has certain purpose and effects. And then the basic elements, I'm not going in detail because you can read from my own notes, but I want to show some of the practical questions. If you go back in your countries and you are asked, can we teach media literacy? Is it something teachable? Is it worth studying or teaching? And if it is, what should be the discipline and what contents? This problem has not been solved in many countries because usually the mother tongue, native tongue language is usually, it's easily connected or combined with media, but it also can be connected, combined with the art, it can be combined with history, with environment study, with any practical, any discipline. And then what elements should we include, and finally, who should and what should we evaluate? Even here, even this very practical course, if I'm going to evaluate about you, about media literacy, what should I ask? What do you understand with media literacy? Or can you do something to show you media literate competence? So the evaluation is also different, and it has to be solved. One change has been that instead of having tests or written exams, it is more or less a portfolio or production. More important is to show me your production. What have you produced with the media? What kind of video? What kind of story? What kind of children animation? Or what kind of YouTube? Or what is your social media utilization for what purposes? And now we are in a new situation when all kinds of fake news are spreading, and we have to take a different look at the things. And the goal, what is our goal? This is, like I explained, that active citizenship in my understanding, and then how to put it into curriculum and so forth. I'm not analyzing the situation otherwise, but I want to take one aspect which also is discussed at universities, that do we learn better with the new technology, all kind of applications, learning from distance and learning with your own rhythm and at the place that you find most appropriate for your interests. What do we know? What does research show, if anything? And then we come back to the old dilemma that are we really talking about natural sciences, exact sciences, measurable sciences, or are we talking about humanities, history, art and religion and so forth. So this is, it can be debated long time, but most likely the space required learning places like humanities and history usually are, they do not fit very well to the technological environment the way that the bureaucrats and economists believe. But on the other hand, the role of teacher is also changing. I remember when e-learning started 15, 20 years ago, or let's say 15 years ago, or more like already in the 90s, but was spreading more. It was very actively used in computer science, for example, because that could be separated from place. It's a typical area that computer science and related disciplines could be studied separately and without classroom presence and teacher presence. There was Professor Hiltz, Hiltz, was one of the pioneers from New Jersey Institute of Technology in the 90s. And I was personally present in some conferences that was in, I think it was in Canada, some of the Quebec area, Canadian centers, and there was a panel. I think I was in the panel. Anyway, I was there also, and the students were asked, computer science students, those who had been both either with the distance telematic learning courses, and they had a full graduation only through telecommunications. And then there are other students who had the traditional class, that the outcome was equally good. There was no difference of who learned better, who learned worse. But the students who had used only this e-learning, distant learning, they claimed that after all they learned more from the traditional class. They did learn the technical skills, but they felt that they learned in the traditional classroom. That was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Maybe things have changed. Maybe that we have the blended learning, the combined learning is making advance. But this is a big question for the media literacy, that what kind of media skills do we need to develop also in learning? In the beginning, even in the European Union and European Commission, the concern was image. They even started in 2000, 2003, when the expert group was formed, speaking about image education. It took a long time to adopt media education, media literacy, media education, because Europe had a very strong history and traditional film, aesthetics, film education, and all kinds of cultural approaches. The whole concept of media education is very awkward in most European languages. Like in German, Mr. Schröder used it. I remember one of the media political meetings in Berlin with the big publishing house. He used the word Medienalphabetisierung. Some of the times it was a lot of confusion of literature, that literacy and literature and literacy, because the literacy American concept doesn't translate that the American concept implied in literacy skills and practical competencies. We had strong tradition of literary approach. And let me conclude with a small, it's not a joke, but it's in a farewell dinner. One of the old professors it was new in Germany, in Berlin, in Freie Universität, Free University in Berlin. One of the professors said that because the skepticism against this new concepts and literacy was so, and internet and computer was so strong. He said that when he asked his students, what do you think if Goethe lived now, would he use internet? And the answer was, yes, of course he would use, but who is Goethe? So this shows that the old elite has so strong view of culture and figures and personalities, and so little interest in the new technology, the fashion of new technology, that sometimes it's like a joke. Equally, when I ask, or we ask students, we saw a book. Look, I have this book. Have you read this book? And then somebody said, yes, I have seen it in the social media. Some of the friends have spoken about this book. And it's the same as having read the book. So this cultural change was so clear. Many of you are political scientists, or political study. Of course, we can ask, is political science, is it science? This is an issue that in Columbia University in New York, they are now discussing that why do political scientists use the word science, because they don't have any exact content. But we can then also say, why do education, why do many other people, human areas speak about science, because it's not that kind of science as a natural science. But if you ask about the truth, in a natural science, it's very obvious to decide what is the truth. You can have an empirical test. And if the empirical approach is it doesn't mean that it's a final truth. The truth can be much different in a deeper analysis, but still you can prove something universal. But what is the truth in political science or in media? This is a basic and professional issue that we must discuss in the context of professional ethics, because in social science in general, and I am a social scientist now, I do have studies and I'm a professor of education, but my doctoral thesis and my studies have been social science, and I see myself as a social political scientist. In social science, there is no such a thing as universal truth. The truth is in the discussion, in the dialogue. So that's why if you don't have a debate or discussion in social political science, there's no truth. It can be ideological, it can be a political order that this is what you have to teach, you have to believe, but it's not the same, because you always have the counter argument and the so-called truth, capital or small t. The truth comes through the argument and debate, and in the media, that is the idea of free media, if we have free media. If you have only one media, or even if you have 2 or 3 medias but controlled by the same philosophy and same approaches, it doesn't mean that there will be that kind of truth that we understand as an outcome of free debate. So politicians want to dictate or organize public debate according to their own interest and agenda. But that is why it is good to have many politicians. Maybe they are all corrupt, but still more than one politician. That is what the Brazilian ousted President Dilma Rousseff, when she visited Finland a couple of weeks ago, she was asked by the Finnish journalist something like this, that are the Brazilian politicians all in prison? She said that yes, they are all in prison. The problem is that you don't know who are guilty and who are not. So it shows that the whole system is bad or corrupt. And you imprison innocent, not innocent, but political figures because of whatever reasons. So politicians have their own interests, and that's the most difficult situation. Like in Brazil now, that what is so-called truth on what? It's not only Brazil, but I just take because Dilma Rousseff. I have been to Brazil. I was half a year there not long ago and organizing, consulting university. But let's put this way that is the idea of democratic society, that we must have, even at universities, we must not have only one type of university in social political sciences. We should have different type of universities in order to develop other type of paradigm, other type of approach to social political problems, because maybe the dominant university is favoring the professors have been appointed not for seeking a truth in a sense, but promoting a given truth, promoting some ideological position. This is my answer. I don't know if it's satisfied, but I'm for politics. I think that it's better to have political debate than non-political technocratic dictatorship. I come back to the issue of truth a little later, because even Henry Kissinger takes up the question and problem of truth in today's world, and because the media are facing serious crisis, dominant media, for different reasons in the world. People do not trust the media as they used to do before, for reasons, for good reasons or for unknown reasons, but also the media has been concentrating too much. So the alternative views are not reflected properly in the media. And then there's this international situation which is unstable, situation that is not predictable, and the propaganda is increasing, and behind all of this, instead of peaceful intentions, there is a conflict in promotion. I don't know if this answers, but it's a good question that what is the issue of truth? Because media literacy should be helping us to see the biases, the fake news, and all the false interpretations in the media. The first thing that we wanted to promote, and I want to promote, is that it's easy to divide the world, the digital world, that there's a digital divide, gap for those who have not new technology. But the divide is not only technological, it's also cognitive, and that's why how do we distribute the cognitive competencies? It's equally important, and this is exactly the literacy, that how do we promote media and information literacy throughout the world, not only how do we distribute the technology. It seems very easy that if it's a problem of technology only, you just give computers and network connections and broadband, and then it comes all positive things. We are, and I am for the international cooperation and participation, not dividing some parts of the world or excluding some parts of the world. Again, media literacy should be one way of helping this cooperation globally. And thirdly, this global education is a challenge. Is there such a thing as global education, or are we talking about idealistic goal with no relevance in today's world? In the Finnish Ministry of Education, already 15 years ago, we developed approach to global education, but Finland is not a major player in the global activities in any of them, but not even in education, but it is now more or less global citizenship education, and I'll speak a little bit more about this global citizenship concept. But I can give you an example that when 10 years ago, when I was lecturing about this global education in China, in a place, I forgot now the place. It was a teacher education place, but I spoke about importance of global education, and the teachers, Chinese teachers, were a little bit confused. What does professor mean with global education? And I understand that if I'm in some of your countries or in China, maybe the teachers are so much trained, educated to serve the Chinese educational goals or the Polish goals or South African model, and then somebody comes and say global education, what does it mean? But the Chinese authorities were very well aware, and I didn't need to answer because the trainers, the Chinese, they already explained that the professor is right, that there are new type of problems, environment, pollution, population, energy, that are global, and we have to prepare ourselves for the global challenges. And that was okay and acceptable. But I realized that it's not an easy concept for many to accept, because the whole concept of civil society or citizenship is not that globally existing as we or the Americans believe. So anyway, the promotion of global citizenship education is one of our goals. Interaction that should be between people of different nature, and then increasing the public sphere and communication values in the discussion. And finally, this culture of peace. That is there such a thing? Is culture contributing to peace, or is it moving towards violence and conflict? Exactly the same problem that we have now when we talk about extremism and hate speech and violence in the media. So this is not new, but we thought, scholars, we thought that in the 90s perhaps we have overcome this, because culture is it can be a force that reproduces the same pattern that it has been done for generations, or it can be something that can be created and reshaped. Can we build another type of culture in a highly diversified global culture? Or is this the idealistic naivism, foolishness that Western intellectuals, believers, goodwill people want to say?